Hello and welcome to my GP Cloud. We're going on to accounts payable and accounts receivable setup options within the system. I'm going to start with my payables window, clicking on the purchasing area page here, and then I'm going down to setup. I'm going to choose payables. This brings me open to the payables management setup window. Here we have a couple options for aging periods. You could do it by due date or document date. Often I see people wanting to age this as of the document date. And you can have up to 7 periods here, current and then 6 others. I encourage you to leave it at 4 or less. If you have anything more than 4 aging periods, then you have to modify your canned reports in the system to include those other 3 other 3 periods. Here you can put passwords on any of your different options that you list here. It's defaulted to access, but you can change that to whatever you like. One thing I do like to have here is my defaults for my checkbook ID. Here in the Fabricant system it's set as Uptown Trust. In your live system it's set up as operating checkbook, so that is already entered in there. The check format I almost always use is the stub top and bottom graphical, and that's set there. Here you're able to modify your checks to have a logo or any other options that you like. To make those modifications to the reports, you have to go into the full rich client, not just the web client. You don't have that options there. And this checkbox here, print previously applied documents on remittance. You can have that checked off if you wanted to show anything that you've applied on the next check stub when you print a report. The 1099 setup window for payables. This is by default. It gives you different options for your 1099s. Usually the 1099 miscellaneous is set to 600, so those are all set in there, but that's where you'd go in if you wanted to adjust any of those settings. Now the classes for both reports, for payables and receivables, it's important to identify classes. I often will come in here and choose a 1099 class, and then I'll put in 1099, and under the options area here where it says not a 1099, I would come in and choose a miscellaneous if that's the case. And what that allows me to do is anytime I enter in a payables vendor, I'll be able to assign it to the 1099 class, and then I know that 1099 is going to be captured appropriately at the end of the year. Credit limit, you can identify those if you like. Often I just leave it as unlimited, but you can do that for customers. Change it to an amount if you'd like to say I don't want to have more than a certain number, $5,000, $10,000 going outstanding for the particular customer. And then the last thing here under accounts, if I go in here and I choose my accounts payable account, you can select any of the other accounts that you'd like as well, but it's really important to have that accounts payable and in the receivables, the accounts receivables account there, so that it defaults to that when you're entering in transactions. Now the individual transactions themselves, the distributions will come from either the vendor or the customer, and so you can go in under the accounts area for the vendor or the customer and select the default account there, and then that way you don't have to do distributions for every time you enter in a transaction. Now the importance of entering in these classes is that when you're entering in vendors or customers right from the beginning, you can enter it in as a class, and all of these settings that you've put in will default for that particular vendor or customer, so you don't have to do that every single time. So that saves and speeds up the entry of these master records. Now I've looked a little bit here under the payables section. Let's just go over to the receivables so you can see what that looks like. I'll save those changes that I've made there, and I'll go under sales, and I'll go under setup and then receivables. So here in the receivables management setup window, you see in the Fabricant company, the sample company, they do set it up with 7 aging periods. I would take this and put it only into the 4 aging buckets like I said previously. Here are some more passwords you can enter in, some default checkbook IDs, and some other options that you can go through to look at that. Under the options window, I didn't show you this in payables, but it's very similar to this in payables. Here is the numbering here. So if you're entering in receivables, invoices. This is what your numbering scheme is going to be. You can remove some zeros because there's about 1,000 of those in each one, and that would be fine as well. Your sales history, I would often come in here and mark off include all of your history because I like the system to keep track of it. It's only a little bit of space, doesn't take too much. And once again, if you look under classes, there is a few different options here for the vendor, for the customer class, but it's very similar to the payables. You could come in here and you see this one was set up as a $20,000 credit limit. There is some payment terms that you can select. You can add sales ID and territories if you're wanting to keep track of commissions, and there's a few other options here that you can go through. The accounts is very similar to the payables area where you can go in and choose an accounts receivable area, and you can set some default accounts. But when we go through setting up and entering in vendors and customers, I'll actually lead you through setting up the distribution accounts for each of those. For MyGP Cloud in your live environment, we've done most of these setups, but you'll still want to go through and verify that the default settings that we've put in are what you desire.